How do you explain chastity to this generation?
The way you do it is you have to first convince them that there's a difference between good and bad, and that your faculties of reason actually can discern with some degree of reliability between the two. That is a huge hurdle for a generation that has been bred on the poison of subjectivism and radical individualism and self-sovereignty and self-ownership, which is a poison that has infected the left a lot, but also parts of the right. And so they'll say, well, who's good? Who's bad? What truth? My truth, your truth? How do we really know? And you need to say, well, our entire society and even our personal lives, or the way we wake up in the morning, is predicated on the idea that your faculties of perception are basically reliable. Your reason is basically reliable. You have a moral conscience. There is such a thing as good and bad and true and false, and you can tell the difference between them. If that's all fake, if that's all just a construct that we've made up for ourselves, then okay, fine. Well, you've got to give up self-government. You've got to give up any argument that you would ever have. You've got to stop pretending that your desires have anything rational about them. They're just the grunts of animals. But nobody really believes that. Nobody really lives that way. So the first thing you got to do is, I think, show people that they actually can know certain things. And after that point, you can say, okay, well, then there's a proper way to behave. And there's a proper way to, if you're chaste within marriage, that looks one way. When you're not married, that looks another way. And if you're chaste and unmarried, you're very likely going to want to get married a little more quickly, which is good for you and for society. And so many of the social trends that we've seen in recent years, all up to and including the death of the population, the fact that we're literally dying because we're not having enough kids, can be traced to that confusion, that intellectual confusion, and then that failure of virtue to actually act in a way that's appropriate.
What if some people say, and they do say this, I don't know that they would use the word chastity, but they would say, okay, I believe in, they have their sexual ethics, and yeah, of course we need to have consent, and we need to have respect, and we need to have some sort of equality in the relationship of, we see each other's dignity, but we don't need to get married before, getting in bed together. Like that's a little extreme there, and this is not so harmful the way that you make it out to be, you fundamentalist. We're just loving each other, and we might even get married. We do love each other, but we'll see. We're maybe not ready for that. I mean, what is the message to that?
That is the logical conclusion of someone who thinks that consent is the ultimate and really only moral criterion, which is a sad conclusion of political liberalism on the left and on the right. And it doesn't need to be. If you go back and you read the fathers of liberalism, as a political philosophy, they weren't saying this sophomore in college late night nonsense, but that has seemed to be a conclusion of it. And so you have to convince people that there is more to morality than just, do you agree? A couple could agree to beat each other up, to, whip each other.
That's a thing too.
Right? They do it. They do that. That's right. It's 50 Shades of Grey. That doesn't make it good, right? But a lot of people would say, no, if they agreed to it, it's perfectly fine. And this is, I think, been exposed by the MeToo movement. So in the MeToo movement, there are a handful of cases of real violation, but often it's consensual activities between aspiring actresses and film producers, usually, and then years later, the women come to have regret for the way they degraded themselves for a part that maybe didn't even come in with some disgusting producer who's ugly both inside and out, and then they look back and they say, well, this was a violation somehow. But often it was consensual. The woman showed up to the guy's hotel room and engaged in these acts, but it was still wrong. And so
it still was a violation.
Exactly.
For both of them.
Right. Yes. They've both done something disordered here. And maybe there's a power imbalance, and maybe the producer should be punished more. I mean, but the moment that you begin to have that conversation, you have at least at that point broken through this roadblock, which is the notion that consent is all that matters. Consent is important in a lot of aspects of life, but there's more to it as well.